Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll wait a few moments to allow people to enter into the webinar. We'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We'll wait one more minute and we will move forward with the webinar. Hope everybody's having a great day. All right. Good to see you, Mr. Uriah Israel. Thank you for joining us. Okay, others will likely join us as we move forward in the session, but we have a great webinar today. I'm excited about the webinar, and I'm excited about our guest speaker today. So we will go ahead and get started with today's webinar, Habits That Create Wealth. Before we move on, I want to make sure that we touch on some webinar housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. We will post it to the Freedmen Heirs Foundation website as well as our YouTube channel. So if you have to duck in and out, you'll always have the option to go back and to review the recording today. Attendees, please keep your cameras off and the microphones are muted. The chat and Q&A functions are enabled, so if you need to ask Patrice and I a question, please use the chat questions for Mr. Ross. We ask that you place them in the Q&A function, and all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So Patrice and myself, we will continue to monitor the questions, but we'll wait and hold them to the end of the session. And before we move on, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about Freedmen Heirs Foundation and who we are. We are a nonprofit organization that supports Black farmers across the United States with access to capital, access to resources, financial resources, as well as new market opportunities. We are so excited about the work that we're doing. Please connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Instagram. And I would also like to note that my name is Seneca Edwards Heron, and I am the founder and executive director. We also have Patrice Lazard on the webinar with us today, and she is our project manager. Our guest speaker today is Mr. P. Wade Ross. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO. He is also the co-owner of Hoganey Farm Products, a cattle and grass farming operation just outside of College Station, Texas. Mr. Ross is a fourth-generation farmer on land that has been in his family since the 1800s. That is exceptional. Mr. Ross parents, Mr. W. Wade and Miss Anita Ross, established the Texas Small Farmer and Ranchers Community-Based Organization in 1998. Previously serving as the organization's executive director, Mr. Ross accepted the role of chief executive officer in the wake of the pandemic shutdown to help keep the mission of serving Black farmers moving forward into the connected age. Recognized around the state of Texas as a voice of change and a change agent for small farmers of color, Mr. Ross serves on numerous boards, coalitions, and collaboratives throughout the South. This includes recently being selected to serve East Texas in the newly formulated Delta Regional Food Business Center. In the past year, Mr. Wade Ross has been featured in articles by CNN, the Dallas Morning News, Wall Street Journal, and the Austin Chronicle around the important subject of racial equity and social justice. From their massive past efforts, the Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO is credited by many for the large number of census responses from Black farmers. It is said to be unprecedented in the history of Texas, in the history of the census of Texas. In 2012, his father and organization founder, Mr. W. Wade Ross, received USDA's Secretary's Honor Award for forging partnerships and other entities leading to changes that promote sustainable client bases and healthy environments for rural and underserved communities. With the understanding that effective farming starts with establishing fertile soil, Mr. Ross is currently in the final stages of becoming certified as a natural soil biology consultant through the Soil Food Web School. Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO's current focus is to establish clear on-ramps and pathways for small producers of color to profitably participate in local food systems and establishing a culture and legacy of prosperity to be enjoyed for generations to come. Before I hand it over to Mr. Ross, we want to gauge the temperature of the audience today, and we have a poll that we would like for you all to answer. Patrice, please raise the poll for us. We'll give you a minute or two to answer the questions, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Ross. Okay, without further ado, Mr. Ross, we will hand over this part of the webinar to you to share your screen.
All right, well, let's see if I can pull that off here. Hopefully you can see my screen there. Yes, okay, thumbs up. All right, well, thank you so much, Seneca, and thanks for putting together this platform as well. Such a great platform to share with our brothers and sisters. The topic of finances and money always is kind of tricky to put together because, especially with the new audience, because it's a very personal topic. So what I've tried to do is really relate to all levels of finances by providing a framework that really works, hopefully for everyone in finances and in their business experience. So I do encourage everyone, no matter what level you're at in your finances, to really listen in a way that you can share some of this information, this framework with your peers, because as we know, a rising tide should lift all boats. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rolling here. Now, by design, the mental conditioning in our early educational system has really, led us to believe that if we work hard in school, we land a decent job, that our trajectory when it comes to our finances and our money is going to, rise like an escalator. But as many of us know, especially by the time we hit about 30 years old, that the reality is it's more like a roller coaster going up and down and sideways. And I'm going to share a few quick stats with you. One is that 51% of Americans say they have difficulty paying their bills each month. 2 out of 5 have experienced money-related anxiety, and 48% say that they would be homeless if they lost their job today within 3 months. So those are some pretty eye-opening statistics and, some other statistics right in our community, our Black community, is that we spend over $3 trillion each year as consumers, yet less than 2 cents out of every dollar stays within our community. And one of the most alarming stats, I'm not sure how true it is, but that less than when we receive our paycheck, it sits in a Black person's account on average less than 7 hours, compared to some of the other ethnicities that are up to 27 hours. 27 weeks on average. So as you can see, we have work to do, and hopefully some of these statistics that I shared with you really get you leaning forward in this presentation, understand the importance of it. And platforms like this is where it all starts. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So really, in life, we're conditioned to become employees, and in doing so, many of us are trying to just stay ahead of our paychecks, living day to day. And really, the sad truth is that this is really by design. Our society is set up to create us as workers, to make others rich and put money in other people's pocket. So what happens is you have thousands of graduates who enter the workforce ready to make money, but ill-equipped to keep that money that they earn and make that money grow. So, and it's really because we spend so much time, so many years, if you think about it, in educating, learning how to make money, but very few, less than you could probably count less than on both hands how many hours you spend during that same time learning how to keep that money, let alone grow it. So as you can see, those are some big reasons for the results that we see. So really, this presentation is really about breaking that chain that you see on your screen there, that stronghold that has become an epidemic in our community when we're talking about our money. And really, the truth is that the stats that I just shared with you are not new. It's something that's gone on for generation after generation. So we can talk all day as farmers about soil and crops and crop rotations and livestock, but it really doesn't matter if we're not learning and teaching our children how to keep our hard-earned dollars that we're working so hard for and leaving that legacy for them. It needs to become part of our culture. So really what I'm going to be talking about, like I said, are just some frameworks, some principles to create wealth. And really, no matter what level, like I said earlier, these principles remain the same. This framework remains the same. So let's go ahead and jump in. And really, number one is the first step is to understand that this is really the most important one, is that we have to adopt a wealthy mindset. Now, when we say adopting a wealthy mindset, it's really important to understand that people who build wealth look at money and they view money differently than the rest of us. They're looking through a different set of lenses. And really what wealth builders do is they view every dollar as a potential employee that they can put to work, and they view their job is putting that money, that dollar, in position to earn more dollars for them. So probably I'm going to give you an example, real life example. Back in the day when I personally had no real plan for my money, I was, just another statistic out there, like I just shared. But I had a business partner who asked me to go half on a boat that looked just like the boat you see in the picture there. And at the time, seemed like a good plan. I actually lived in Seattle, and I was surrounded by water, so it made all the sense in the world. At least at the time, it seemed like it did. But so without a second thought, went out and bought a boat. We went out and bought a boat together. And early on, I was excited. I got to see things that I never had seen before out on the water. But pretty soon, owning that boat got real awful because I not only had to pay for the boat payment that came month in and month out, but I also had a mortgage payment that came in every month. Had to put gas in it, and trust me, gas in a boat costs twice as much as a car. And if you break something on a boat, for any of you boat owners, you know that it costs twice, 10 times as much to fix it. So, and you can only take it to the dealer, and you know what happens when you take something to a dealer, they're going to charge you. So, um, but the crazy thing was I could not understand why this was not bothering my business partner. And the fact that we were shelling out all this money. I later learned that what he did was he invested in a house, number one, appreciating assets. So, and in that house, he rented out, I think he had 6 or 7 bedrooms because he had a basement in there too. He rent every room out to his frat brothers. Because so at the end of the day, not only did that pay for his mortgage, but it also paid for it paid for the boat and a bunch of other leisurely things that he was doing. So I share this story with you to give you an example of how a wealthy minded person thinks. Before he ever considered buying that boat, he first made sure that his money was working for him to pay for that boat. And he was smart enough to ask me to go half on it. So that even lightened his load a bit versus me. I felt the pain all the way to selling that boat. But anyway, I wanted to give you that example because that really sets the tone for how we want you to start thinking moving forward. We want to have you start thinking, how can you grow your money? And if you want something, how can you make your money work for you? So um, the step number 2, I would say in the framework, is really taking inventory. If you don't know where you're at financially, do you really know where you're going? So we want you to take inventory. And what a wealth builder does is they don't just look at their businesses in, you know, different silos. They lump everything together, and they view their business with the mindset of everything they do is you incorporated, it's them incorporated, it's a business to them. And that way, when they're going out and they're doing these day-to-day habits, it ensures that they're living the financial principles day in and day out that I'm going to be sharing with you in our time together today. So one thing they do is they take inventory on their team, the people in their lives, the decision makers, and the people that influence their day-to-day decisions with their money. These may be their family members. This may be the people managing their land, so on and so forth. But these people have to be at the table when you're doing the planning. So often, I talk to farmers who are complaining because the decision makers in their life are giving them grief, or they're having some difficulty because maybe they need an extra, piece of cash, or need to do something on some land that a family member co-owns, but they didn't bring them to the table up front and make them a part of that planning. So that person has no stake in what they're doing. It's a much tougher lift if you're not having those conversations up front. So I encourage you, make sure that you get all the decision makers at the table, you know who they are, and you make sure that when you're planning, you're setting those boundaries and they're being defined collectively with the people that you need to count on. If it's just you and you got full control of everything, so be it. But if you know there should be someone else at the table, please get them at the table up front. The other thing is you do want to take inventory on some of the resources that you have. One is your human resources, your farm hands, your neighbors, miscellaneous labor that you can tap into. You know, some of your natural resources, such as your pasture, your land, your trees, your wild animals that are there, your water resources. What does that look like? You know, you want to know what that looks like up front and take inventory. You also want to know, you know, what type of material resource do you have? Things such as tools, equipment, livestock, vehicles. Another big one is your network, associations, CSAs, co-ops, farmers markets. Maybe you have some wholesale opportunities. One tip I would say is to look up the book, The Power of Who, because that book it was a life changer for me. It basically told me, hey, I already know, and this is probably the same for you. You probably already know everybody you need to know to have a successful business. And you want to write that out because you'll be surprised at who you're not tapping into and leveraging to lift your business and your finances. And then last but certainly not least is your intellectual resources, some of your personal strengths that you and your team or your family bring to the table that can enhance your business. We so often overlook some of the great resources that are right underneath our nose because we fail to take inventory. So that's something I encourage you to do yearly because things change, you know. But when we're talking about financing, your finances, that is a big piece in our framework. The other piece of that is of taking inventory, of course, is also our income sources. So that can include such things as our day job. Many of the farmers I say day job because many of the farmers that we work with in Texas, you know, have a day job, even if it's their retirement, you know, and any other income generated through the farm, maybe it's off farm income, retirement, side hustles, whatnot. Make sure you're taking inventory of that going in, just so you have a picture of you incorporated. Next up, I would say plan for profit. And this is where you want to start leaning in because I want to give you all some pretty good nuggets here. Yeah, this one's a really good nugget. So basically, conventional planning says factor in your income, subtract out your expenses, and what's left over makes up your profit. Now, here's why this equation really doesn't work for us. As farmers and as business owners, we typically take pride in the work we do. So we are conditioned to spend to improve our production. It's just the way it is. We're production focused. And the problem with that is as our expenses increase, as we're trying to improve our operations, it chokes out our profit. In fact, I had three different calls this week of farmers contacting me looking for guidance on a farm loan, but none of them have given the first thought of how much profit they want to make. So what we want to do is change that narrative. People who build wealth plan their profit first. Okay, it's a non-negotiable for them. And by planning their profit, they automatically makes them cap their expenses and how much they run up. So their money is working for them instead of them being controlled by their money, or in many cases for farmers, we're controlled by our farm because, you know, we've approached it with the production mindset. So I'm going to try to explain this a different way. So I'm a foodie, so I'm gonna try to explain it through food. So let's say that you are at Thanksgiving dinner and it's a sweet potato pie there. I know we all like sweet potato pie. When it's time to eat that dessert, most families don't sit that pie out there and then just hand you a spoon and say, hey, everyone go at it, because that would be a mess. You know, so what most families do instead is they slice up that pie into portions and we move those portions onto a smaller plate, okay? This is exactly what wealth builders do with their money. Okay. They use this very same concept. They figure out up front how much profit they want from their business. Okay. And then what they do is when that pie comes fresh out of that oven, in this case, it represents their payday. I'll put that there. What they do is they put it on a serving pan, and that serving pan represents their checking account. Okay. Now their goal is to move that slice, that profit off of that off of that pan, out of that checking account and into an individual account, a smaller plate as soon as they can. Okay. They put it into a designated account for profit. And that's what I want y'all to do is open up an account, pay yourself first. It's human nature to spend what is sitting in your checking account. It just is. Trust that. Y'all are probably doing it right now as we speak. And it's the number one reason why it's so difficult to build wealth. Okay. So the magic happens when you move that slice, that profit out first. And because you moved it out of your checking account, you automatically reduce your spending without even trying. Problem with us is we're trying to save money, and what we have to do is kind of reverse engineer how we are, the natural habits that we already have, and that's what you're doing here. So there are some best practices to make sure that you do this. So I've put together some do's and don'ts, and here you go. Number one is pay your profit first. It's the first thing that you have to do. Don't pay your expenses before you got that profit taken out and put it in a side account. Okay. The next thing is make it a routine. Get in a rhythm of doing it regularly. Pick a couple dates. If you know you get paid on the 1st, maybe on the 5th and the 20th, especially if you're paid twice a month, that's when you take that money out and put it in that side account. And preferably it's an account that you can't reach, okay? Which gets me to the next thing is set it and forget it, okay? Forget you're even doing it. Like I said before, the magic is getting it out, paying yourself first, but forgetting about it, okay? So for the first 3 months at least, I don't even want you looking at the balance. Please don't. Let that momentum go. Now, after 3 to 6 months, maybe you can look at the balance, because what it's going to do at that point is help you with momentum. It's going to really encourage you, because you're going to look at the balance and go, wow, I have these extra funds, and it's going to encourage you to keep going. Okay. Now we have some don'ts. What you don't want to do is pay expenses before you've taken that money out. Okay. Pay your expenses first. Okay. The other thing you don't want to ever do is dip into your profits to pay expenses. That's a no-no. We're not going to do that. Matter of fact, that's why the whole reason why we're taking that account and pushing it away from us. The other thing is do not procrastinate, y'all. This is something that you want to do today once you get off this call. If you're really serious about building your wealth, don't put this off. This is something you can do today. You can call up your bank, you can go down to your bank and open up an extra account that you can immediately transfer funds. So you probably already have a savings account that you're not using right now. Some of us do. Do that, figure that out, and then every set those schedules where that money, even after you move it out, you're going to put it in another account on the 5th and 20th or whatever those days are for you, and get in that routine. But the trick is getting it off, taking it off of that counter, off of that serving platter, and put it on that small plate as quickly as you can. All right. Hopefully y'all are tracking with me. I'm trying to talk food now. I know we all like food. So this is basic stuff, but this is the things that people who build wealth do each and every day. They're just not sharing this with us. All right. So every true wealth builder will tell you that part of their secret formula to building wealth also is creating additional cash flow. So when you're talking about you incorporated, we're talking about everything that encompasses you and your family's household income. So that could be your day jobs. And we're talking enterprises now. An enterprise, if you guys have ever heard, are not really familiar with that word, all an enterprise is different departments or different ways of making money under the same roof. So in this case, we're going to say one of our enterprises is our day job, the money that we have coming in on our primary income for those of us who do work a day job but are still, doing farming. And then maybe, and these are all examples, yours could be totally different. Maybe you sell hay, that's part of your farm business. And in addition to selling hay, maybe you have some excess land that you're really not using, and maybe you want to rent that out or lease that out to other farmers so their cows or their cattle or their livestock, because they don't own any land, can graze on yours. And, not only does that make you a little bit of extra money, but it can help your soil health as well. Maybe you walk your land and you notice that you have some extra wild, berries and grapes that are growing. Maybe that's a business for you. You can turn that into, jellies and jams, and, take a course on how to do that. And that becomes another enterprise for you to make money. And also maybe you decide, hey, I want to have some little livestock. You go out, buy some chickens, and those chickens can maybe serve as, meat as well as eggs. And even you decide to sell the poop, to some gardeners in the area who are looking to create compost. All those can be extra things, and these are just ideas, it's just examples, but these are how wealth builders think when they're talking about making extra income. Extra income, additional cash flow is always a secret formula for those who are looking to build wealth. So some quick tips when it comes to creating new enterprises. I don't want to go on without saying this, is be careful. You want to avoid doing too much too fast, okay? You don't want to neglect your golden goose, whatever that is really making your big dollars for you, because you're chasing other opportunities. So be careful on that. Take small bites when you're starting a new enterprise. And I like to implement it by doing what I call safe to fail projects or trials, where I go small and really learn what I'm doing before I go big. If I've never worked with chickens before, or sheep, or even cattle, I don't want to go out and buy 100 head of cattle if I've never worked with them before. I want to buy a few, a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5, and get used to that, build up, because if it just doesn't work out, that's not a big loss for me versus buying, trying to buy a whole lot of them, okay? The other thing I would say when it comes to enterprises is make sure as you implement new enterprises into your U Incorporated, that you're separating them from your main business, so you can track and really get a gauge on whether this business is really working out, or maybe it isn't and you need to dump it and move on, okay? All right, we're on our fifth one here. This is a big one. We want to take some time. This is one that a lot of us farmers fail to do because we're workers. We like to be at work, and we feel like we're not working if we're taking time to not have our hands in the dirt. And I encourage you not to think that way. One of the best things that you can do is stop at least once a year or even every 6 months and really assess how your business is doing. Okay, so there's three or four key things I'm going to share with you under that umbrella. But one of the first things is make sure that you're measuring your cash flow. In particular, what time of year are you being hit with unusually large expenses, and how does that impact your business? Now, why is this important? It's important because having cash to operate your business is your business. If you don't have any cash, you have no business. Trust that, and that's the number one thing, the number one reason why any business goes out of business, but especially farmers, is because we overlook seasonal cash flow cycles, and all of a sudden we run out of money because we don't see what's coming. So very important to start measuring when you're taking those big hits or those big expenses such as property taxes and things like maybe you have a farm loan. In a lot of cases, if you have a farm loan, that's going to be due once a year, and if you're not prepared for it, trust me, it hurts. So now how do we combat that? Is we go back to our sweet potato pie, y'all. So going back to the example I gave you before, you can use that same method with your large expenses. So maybe you have a large property tax expense that comes out. Do the same thing. Take that slice out of your checking. It's coming. Take it out every month and put it away. If you owe $1,200 a year and it's going to come up in April, then starting today, take that $100 and take it out and set it aside. So when April comes about, it doesn't hurt you. You're ready for it. You got that money there. Okay. Same with the farm loan. You can do the same concept. The key though is don't touch that profit, y'all. This has nothing to do with your profit. Okay. This is a totally separate thing, but you can use that same concept. Another aspect of your business that you want to assess is what I just shared with you, is your enterprises. I kind of touched on it earlier, but you want to know what single thing in each enterprise will have the greatest impact on your ability to generate more money. So start measuring that, because as you see on the screen there, chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So going back to the slide that I showed you earlier, decide where you're going to reinvest more energy to improve on each one of those enterprises that you see on this screen there. And again, this is just an example. And or what may need less of your time and energy right now. So you can go back, put that energy in other businesses that you're really seeing success on. And again, this can be done quarterly or every 6 months, but at minimum, you want to do it at least once a year. Okay. And then the last piece I would say on assessing your business is you do want to reassess your expenses. So you want to think, where can I free up cash? Where can I free up more cash to really invest that in what's already generating me some good business? So would you want to invest that cash? You could do it in such things as log jams. Now, log jams are really those things that are keeping your entire operation from moving forward, what that might be. So, for instance, you may know just from your time that you don't have time to sit at a farmer's market, but it may make more sense for you to go into a wholesale relationship. When to sell wholesale, you need to have food safety and GAP certification. So maybe it makes sense for you to invest in training that so you could take your business to the next level. Also, you may want to, find ways to make your farm operation more efficient. For example, you may be just planted a vegetable garden and you're assessing things and you're going, wow, I'm having problems keeping these animals, this livestock out of my vegetable garden. So maybe you invest in electric fence, so on and so forth. And again, always look at your enterprise. We covered this in the last slide to make sure that, maybe there's certain enterprises that you want to invest more time into. Maybe there's some that you want to dump. So how am I doing on time here? Ooh, I'm at 52. Let me hurry up here. I would say finding your sweet spot is really your goal as a business operation and as far as your finances. And really, when I talk about sweet spot, we're talking about looking at your top clients unique product offering, whether it's your product or your service, and systemization. Systemization just is your farm operation. Where do all those things intersect to create synergy, to create a situation where if you do these things and all these things intersect, it's going to really create a well-oiled machine that's going to automatically create more money for you. So I'm going to slip through these slides real quick, skip through a few of them, but I want to get to mastery. So lastly, I'm going to hit on mastery, which is really just some general tips as you go on your financial journey, especially in the farm business. One is don't want what you don't want. In other words, don't fall into a trap of trying to keep up with the Joneses. This is something we have bad in our community. We see our neighbor goes out and buys that new tractor. We got to get one. You know, and I shared with you the story of me buying a boat. Made no sense in the world. You know, all that glitters is not gold. So think it through, listen to your gut, and follow your own ambitions and your family's own ambitions. Your journey is your journey. I would also say think win-win. Every business situation is not for you. If you are introduced to someone and they're selling you something and your gut says, this is probably not going to be best for me, then don't do it. It's okay to walk away. On the flip side, maybe you have a great opportunity, but it's not so great for the person on the other side of the table. I encourage you to walk away from that situation too, or be willing to, because it's not going to last. Okay, so there's always great situations right around the corner if you think win-win. Have an abundant mindset. And then lastly, I would say control what you control. One of the most common mistakes I see in farming and people in business in general is people make the mistake of thinking that setbacks as an entrepreneur are abnormal. Trust me, it's not abnormal. It's the norm. So the truth is you're going to get knocked down at some point. And when you get knocked down, it's very important that you get up as quickly as possible. Those who get up are those who are going to the ones who are going to separate themselves from the rest in achieving your goals. So I'm going to leave you with my signature saying, which is to be like the bison. I encourage everyone to be like a bison. A bison knows one thing is for sure, and that's that a storm is coming. And so when a bison sees or smells a storm coming, unlike any other animal, they don't run away from it. They do something a little bit different. They face that storm and they run right through it because they understand that the quicker they can face it and get through it, they'll be back on the other side and living their normal life. So that's what I want for y'all. That's how we're going to face this thing moving forward. And I apologize because I know I was supposed to leave some time for Q&A, but this is the framework that we live by at Texas Small Farmers Ranchers Community-Based Organization, and I'm hoping that you're willing to share it with those of yours because it's all about each one, teach one, and lifting up our community. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And you had plenty of time. You didn't have to rush.
Oh,
Yeah. You still have plenty of time left. But thank you so much. A very informative webinar. I know I got a lot of nuggets I was writing down or typing. But very useful information, and it can be used across a lot of different enterprises, organizations. So I thought it was absolutely excellent. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us, as well as with our audience. So I'm very excited to have this one on our YouTube channel because I think it's very timely. And before we jump into the Q&A, Patrice has the results of the poll. So we want to make sure that we can.
All right, so here are the results. Let me know if you can see them.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the results?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Seneca, your mic is muted.
Oh, I'm muted. I'm sorry. The first question, 60% have a financial plan. That's awesome. For the 40% that do not, I encourage you to go back, look at this webinar again. If you have additional questions, please reach out to Mr. Ross. Number two, do you have a monthly household budget? 100% says yes. That's absolutely amazing. And I'm in that number as well. Have you started planning for your retirement? Now, this is a big one. I remember when I started college and my dad started talking to me about retirement, and I was like, oh, I have plenty of time for retirement. You know, that's so far away, but now I wish I had started back when I was in college as he instructed me to do. So I'm very happy to see that 80% of the participants have started a retirement plan. For the 20% that have not, please look into, you know, retirement plans, what type, where you want to be, how you want to live your life during those retirement years, and work on getting that plan started. There's a question says, how do we contact Mr. Ross? We will be providing contact information if you need to reach out to Mr. Ross and ask him additional questions. Now we would like to get into the Q&A portion, and I would like to kick off the first question for Mr. Ross, and that is, how can someone build wealth with existing debt?
Um, Good question. So, kind of going back to that sweet potato pie. It's really about, matter of fact, I rushed through, so let me see if I can tee up my screen here and
Sure.
put this one on. All right, here we go. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so um, really it's about creating, I actually had this one in my slide and I went past it. It's really about creating momentum. So really the key again is to start with an emergency fund. So again, going back to, let me see if I get that on the slide here. Going back to the, you know, when you're talking about your checking account. So let's say you have a debt that you have, and it's a debt that's really not asset generating, money generating asset for you, debt, I should say. Then take a cut out of that pie. Again, take another cut and put that money away into an emergency fund is really what you want to do, because that's going to build up momentum and you don't feel like it's taking away. Most people go straight to paying the debt, but you want to create the momentum. And then once you get up to 6 months, what you're going to do is take half of that, whatever that number is, that amount is that's in your emergency fund, and you're going to take that plus whatever the extra payment is that you want to make, and you're going to pay that lump sum into off on that debt to really get the ball rolling. And then what you'll do is snowball it. So every month, that extra $100 that you were putting into your emergency fund, you'll put that extra on whatever debt you're trying to pay off. Once that entire debt's paid off, let's say it's a total of $200, whatever you normally pay of 100, and the extra 100 you're putting on it. Once it's paid off, you take that $200 that you're already accustomed to paying. Remember what we said. Once it gets out of your checking account, you're already used to doing it. Don't go out and create more debt, which is what a lot of people do. You want to take that $200 and snowball it into something else, into the next debt that you're looking to pay off, or put it right back into your emergency fund, and build that up. And then maybe you can use it to create another enterprise. So just to recap, you want to establish an emergency fund. Once you've done that, take a little bit of that money, I'd say about half of it, put it towards that debt you're looking to pay off, along with now you're no longer putting money into that emergency fund, you're paying down that debt till it's paid off in full. So hopefully that helps.
Great answer. I appreciate the thoroughness in that, and it's definitely applicable across a lot of different areas. And so that kind of segues into the next question. Do you think, like, given learning about creating generational wealth, I think that has a very important educational component. Do you think financial literacy and wealth building should be included in primary education?
I would say absolutely. As I kind of alluded to in my presentation, it's something that's not in our system by design.
Mhm.
By design, they want us in a rat race. They want us running up consumer debt, the 3 trillion that I talked about, with very little bit staying in our pockets. Why? Because that keeps us punching the clock. Once we get stuff that we have to pay for, guess what? That's going to guarantee. That's going to guarantee that you keep showing up at the office and punching
That's
that
true.
clock to make your employers more money. So yes, very important. The story I shared with you about my business partner who was savvy enough to go about it the way he did in buying that boat. The difference between he and I is that he grew up talking about finances with his parents over the dinner table. So
Mm.
by the time he got to the age of an adult, and we were both pretty young guys, we were in our late 20s, he already had that embedded in him. So that's what our job is now, is to, if sometimes you can't count on the education, so we got to learn this stuff ourselves and create our own counterculture, our own narrative when it comes to money, because it is purposely, I believe, purposely designed for us to be, to be employees. Nothing wrong with being an employee, excuse me, but it doesn't hurt for us to create our own wealth as well.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% because it's great to have it in school, but it's also great to have it in home because that's where you get a lot of your first lessons
Yeah.
is in the home with your parents. And that should be something that is not foreign to the next generation as they go out into the world to know like, oh, okay, I know about this. My parents talked to me about it, and you have 18 years to ingrain that into someone's mind. And so that's a very good perspective. So, what are your thoughts on how can individuals balance risk and reward when they're thinking about investing or, as you said, your profits? Because sometimes, you save and you save and you're doing really good and you just want to buy yourself something or you just want to treat yourself. But how do you balance that for the long term? Because you don't want to work and don't treat yourself. But there is a fine line there.
I would say what I shared earlier, which is don't let a year go by where you're not readjusting whatever your goals are. Because we age, some of the stuff that was our game plan, 20 years ago, as we grow and age is something different. So number one is to really each year take a step back and plan out what you want. What is your vision for your money up front? Because if you don't have no plan, you're not you're not planning to win, you're planning to fail with your money. The other thing I think is to really invest in things that you understand. Because if you're not investing in something that you understand, you're really just gambling, and sometimes you win, and I'm guilty of that too. I jumped into the little Bitcoin thing and this and that. I didn't understand that stuff, but, I understand farming. So it behooves me to really invest in that and understand and what I already know, and then seek those things that seem like a good opportunity. Take the time to learn it. Invest in learning and understanding it and taking this safe to fail trial that I talked about. Don't just dump all your money into something because your friend made money. You know, you're probably going to lose. So invest in really learning and understanding. And if you don't understand it, be willing to move on. That's just not for me. So,
Right. Okay, last question that I will ask. I do want to encourage other participants, if you have questions for Mr. Ross, please put them in the Q&A. Um, but I think it's important to allow you the space to provide advice to anyone who may be new to starting their journey to wealth. You know, what are some of your golden nuggets for someone that's just starting out and they're not sure exactly what they want to do? You know, they're not clear on their goals yet. Any wisdom to impart?
One would be to listen to this recording. I don't think, a lot of times we think that there's some kind of silver bullet. There isn't. It's just, people who build wealth basically use that same framework, whatever that looks like in their life, and lean into it. I will say that it's never too late to start, to start building wealth, either whether it's for you or learning it so you can pass it on, to your peers and to the people in your family. As I said before, those are shocking numbers. When I heard those numbers, especially within our community, we got to change that narrative, y'all. And it's up to us to change. We could talk all we want about wealth gap. It's up to us to understand, the design and what, the mental conditioning, the indoctrination of us being employees versus employers, and being owners. It's up to us to change that within our community. So even if you're 80, 90 years old, learn this stuff so you can teach it to others and pass it on as a legacy, within your community, within, the folks who are coming behind you, our youth who are coming behind us. It's never too late to start.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're just about at time, and there aren't any additional questions for from the Q&A. But again, I just want to make sure that I extend my gratitude for your presentation today and taking the time to walk us through how to create generational wealth from the start to the end. It was a great, great webinar, and I do plan to go back and look at it and take some more notes. So again, thank you on behalf of Freedmen Heirs Foundation. Thank you to our panel, additional folks on the line today. And I appreciate you for taking time out of your Friday afternoon to join us for this webinar. We do hope that you will continue to follow this webinar series. And we do have some additional webinars that are coming up through the summer that I think are very important and very informative. So please be on the lookout for those. We also would like to extend the invitation for you all to join us for the June webinar, which is June 18th, Enhancing Your Farm Business Management Practices, the Agribusiness Way. So for those individuals who are farmers or thinking about getting into farming or agriculture, please join this upcoming webinar. And please follow us again on social media platforms so that you can stay up to date on what we're doing. And again, if you have any additional information, we will be sending out a recording. So stay on the lookout for that email with the link to the recording and with Mr. Ross's contact information. So thank you all for joining us again and have a great weekend.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Take care.